Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at Qlik Sense and APIs. We're going to look at an extensive and proven mature set of APIs that are being used not only to develop the product, but are being opened and made available to our end customers. A little bit of legal work up front. This is just something that this presentation may contain forward-looking statements, and it should not be relied on in terms of making a purchase decision. So any kind of development or releasing of information and features that might be mentioned are simply that. So Qlik Sense really is a next generation of visual analytics. It was designed around a number of major themes, which include self-service data visualization, so that they could easily extend the power of Qlik and the associated qualities of Qlik Sense to the end users, so they could easily create their own visualizations in a self-service-based environment with a very rich set of interactive visualizations that allow the end users to truly explore and discover things within data and about their businesses through a really intuitive type of intelligent process. And we'll see some of that intelligence in the visualizations and how we interact with them as we move through today's presentation. The associative data technology that Qlik really is at its core. Qlik has been using this technology since the beginning of the company in '93 and acted as the core for Qlik View, Qlik's other products. Qlik Sense was developed to bring a new whole front-end and UI experience to the end user, and that associative power, being able to move through the data, offers a number of benefits to our end users, to our customers. It's geared around that self-service and visualization, the ability to easily go in and discover things about the business, about the things that you're trying to analyze. It does it through a very intuitive capability for the end users to search through data, to explore it simply by seeing something and clicking on it. The visualizations are very smart. There's a real strength in the, not just in the pretty picture, it's the intelligence behind the pretty picture in a couple of ways. One, that associative engine to bring up information and display it. And two, the intelligent interaction that you can have with the visualizations, being able to zoom in, to move through the scan, to select off the charts, to have them dynamically resize and adapt to the real estate and the visual environment that you're in. Whether you're on a large desktop environment with multiple screens or you're on an iPhone, it handles those real estates in a very graceful and intelligent kind of way. And in self-service for the end user, now the end user can drag and drop to create his own charts, his own graphs, by working from a library of visualization types, a library of predetermined kinds of visualizations, of predetermined dimensions and measures that are built into the applications that end users can easily drag and drop to create their own charts and graphs. The ability to share knowledge and insights is something that's been key in New Sense. A new centralized sharing and collaborative capability to easily be able to generate your own charts and then to share them back out and to manage that process. The ability to communicate through storytelling. Sense has introduced a whole storytelling module and capability that's integrated tightly into the product so that you can have a PowerPoint-like presentation, yet easily jump from those straight into the data analytics product and start to analyze and move things on the fly. And then that sense of mobility, that anything that you see today, that I do today, I literally can do from the car, I can do it from the grocery store, I can do it from an airplane, because I can do all of these things through my iPad or through an Android-type device, anything that supports an intelligent modern browser. And then it really can help enable the broad adoption of intelligence at an organizational level and throughout the organization. Best-of-breed customization and extension offers an incredible opportunity to bring in new kinds of visualizations and to make those visualizations and the data that they represent available to everyone within the organization. Robust data integration allows me to bring in information from a multitude of data sources and data source types and integrate them into a federated, homogeneous whole in terms of a data model in a data environment for doing that exploration. And then being able to have strong enterprise-class governance of that data. Where did it come from? How did it move through the data systems and end up in a dashboard? And being able to manage the quality of the deliverance of the information that end users are working with, and the quality of information when end users create their own charts and graphs. You know they're doing it with valid calculation expressions and formulas. Today, what we're going to focus on are Qlik Sense APIs. How can we take advantage of all the things that Sense brings to us and be able to integrate those kinds of capabilities and leverage its strengths within our own application and our own environment? We're going to take a look at why APIs are important. We're going to take a look at the Qlik Sense architectural framework, what that platform looks like, and how do those APIs fit into that platform. We're going to walk through each one of the APIs and then take a look at the APIs in action. So first, why are APIs important? APIs are important for a number of reasons. One of the big things they do is they enhance the business value. They give me the opportunity as a developer to take advantage and leverage the strengths of QlikView to enhance the end user's experience, to give them a level of consistency that fits within my framework, and to leverage the strengths of end user interaction with the Qlik Sense objects and capabilities of those objects. The opportunity to deliver advanced capabilities. And whether they're very unique kinds of visualizations I want to be able to deliver, whether it's a tight integration between the visualization engine and the calculation engine and my own back-end products, when I want to be able to leverage something that happens in the analytic world and take those analytic results, push them back into my back-end, and take action on those items. Those things help create competitive advantage. And it's important to be able to leverage the APIs so that you can increase your competitive advantage in the marketplace. Doing that is going to help you with realizing increased revenue, improve customer satisfaction, reduce churn of your customers, as well as attracting new customers and bringing new revenue streams into the fold. Flexibility. The APIs are really important because they inherently carry a lot of flexibility with them. The Qlik Sense APIs give us several opportunities of integration points into the Qlik architecture and the Qlik platform, as well as pushing that back into your own systems and where you're trying to bring that in. Different degrees of integration. So I want to integrate my product into a desktop-based platform because I have an on-premise desktop deployed application, or am I a SaaS operation where everything is happening out of the cloud? Being able to have that degree of integration options where you can integrate at the desktop, at the iPhone, at the tablet level, or all the way into a cloud-based platform environment. And in platform support. Qlik is based on open standard technologies, HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript, web-based technology, so the platform support is very neutral. Whether you're running your end user in a tablet kind of world, or you're trying to reach them through a Java, Apache-based world, you can leverage the QlikView APIs because they're working with a ubiquitous UI, which is a modern browser. It's really important within the company to be able to stimulate innovation, to bring up new ways and be able to present things to my end users, and even for end users to have new and innovative ways to explore and move through their analytics. You can do that through extending the platform capability so that I can now start to take things and embed them into a Qlik Sense application. Or I can take things from a Qlik Sense application, a chart, a graph, a visualization, and I can embed that into my own platform environment. So a lot of flexibility in how you can extend the platform capabilities through what we call extension objects and through the APIs. A strong set of APIs and a strong development platform is going to help you accelerate that development so that internally you can reduce your cost and improve your time to market and deliver those innovations in a much more timely manner. So we're going to take a look at the platform and do an overview of the Qlik platform. We'll then look at the APIs and how they fit into this platform. And we'll take a look at each one of the APIs on an individual basis, and then we'll see some of the APIs in action. So the Qlik Sense platform, and one of the things that's key is the Qlik Sense hub. The hub is where that's the end user's first exposure to Qlik Sense. It's the developer's gateway into the platform. It's a drag-and-drop development environment where end users can perform analysis. They can create and develop their own kinds of applications or their own visualizations and charts and graphs. Whether it's a developer or an end user, they have this environment which is the gateway into the UI and interacting with the platform. The management console is where the administrators can do management of all aspects of the Sense deployment. It gives them a centralized point for managing all of the Qlik Sense nodes. You can have a clustered or a multi-node-based environment that can be geographically dispersed. So you can have Qlik nodes in the Pac Rim in Europe as well as in the U.S. and be able to manage all of those systems and those nodes from a central point. The Qlik Sense Proxy service, or the QPS, is really a point of entry for all the Qlik Sense users and for all of the administrators. Whenever we come into Qlik Sense, we're making those requests through the proxy, whether it's an API call that's moving through the proxy to ensure that authorization is managed, all of the sessions and our licensing provision is managed, all of load balancing is managed in this kind of environment. So when I log in, that login process makes a request through the proxy. Let's Qlik know who I am. Qlik ensures that I'm authorized for that. It will start up a session. It will allocate the license for me. And when I open up an application, it will load balance and decide which of those nodes is the best node for me to open the application on and to use it from. The Qlik Sense engine. This is that Qlik associative engine. This is where all the in-memory associated data indexing happens. All the calculations happen here. Because every time we click on something, that associative engine is going to identify what are all the rows of data that are related or associated to what he selected. So if I select the U.S., I want every row of data in the whole data model to come to life and be in play. And then it will calculate every chart and graph using that set of rows. The scheduler. The Qlik Sense scheduler is where we schedule applications for automated reload. So we can set up reloads to happen on a calendar time basis. We can set up a task to drive and control that. We can allow manual. You can have programmatically triggered a task so that if you have an external process that's doing something to data and prepping that data, when that preparation is completed, and it's now ready for Qlik Sense to load that data into the application, we can programmatically trigger a task, and we can do that through the scheduler. And finally, the repository. The Qlik Sense repository is where we store everything and all the information about the Qlik Sense environment. It describes all the users, the security rules, all those facets that make up Qlik Sense come into this central repository and can easily be managed from that location. So the Qlik Sense platform and the APIs. The first set of APIs are those APIs that really are at the very edge, so those end users. There's Workbench, which is a compilation of multiple APIs, as well as the SDK. These happen at the presentation layer, and this is where we can deliver the Qlik Sense analytics to the end users. The Proxy API and the User Directory Connector API work in conjunction with the Proxy service. The Proxy API is where you can have hooks into that Proxy service for doing authentication, authorization, for managing the sessions, etc. The User Directory Connector lets us connect to multiple users and do group resolution. The Engine API interacts with the Qlik associative engine so that we can perform calculations and selections and drive things programmatically to the engine. The repository API lets us hook into the repository so we can manage aspects of the site. And then the QDX SDK is a mechanism for connecting to data sources and bringing in data into the QlikView world where you need something outside of a standard type of connector like an ODBC connector or OLADB connector. These are used heavily for custom kinds of data sources. Let's take a look at each one of the APIs in turn. I'll start with Workbench. The Workbench API really is a springboard tool for building end-user-facing solutions with Qlik Sense. Whether you're building visualization, you're trying to do mashups with web pages, or you're just trying to do back-end communications, Workbench gives you a springboard for developing those. It comprises three major JavaScript APIs. There's the Extensions API, the back-end, and the Mashup API. The Extension API is going to allow us to come in and develop an extension. So an extension is a brand new visualization. I may want a special kind of chart or a special kind of graph that I want to be able to perform an integration with. It may be integrating with a predictive analytics system like R and being able to bring R analytic results into the Qlik Sense environment and driving that. And we'll take a look at that kind of an extension object. The backend lets me talk with the backend engine through a Workbench web page-based environment at a very abstracted layer that's very easy for developers to work with. And then the Mashup API helps me manage Qlik Sense into other web pages. The .NET SDK. The .NET SDK is a toolkit that's really been developed to support .NET-based application and .NET-based development. It includes components for embedding Sense into a host application, whether you're running that in the desktop or you're running it through an ASPX, ASP page up in the cloud. It's made up of a number of different PLLs. We'll take a look at those shortly. You can write it in any kind of language, like C# or Visual Basic. What I like about all the APIs is that they're headless. The older API set and the most powerful API we have with Qlik View incorporates the GUI as a part of it. So you always have that GUI, and it makes it very difficult to create certain kinds of applications where there isn't somebody there to click on something in case some kind of window pops up that requires a user interaction. The fact that they're headless now means that it opens up a whole array of opportunities for me to develop new kinds of interactions with the Qlik engine and with the Qlik environment. Building web services, building automated processes are easily accomplished. It also includes documentation in a format that's familiar to .NET developers. So the development team went to the effort to create documentation, and I'll show you what that documentation looks like here shortly. And they created that in that same format that .NET developers are used to seeing. These are a list of the libraries that are a part of the .NET SDK. There are Qlik Sense-based SDK libraries. There's some common Qlik libraries for accessing, logging, the network kind of interactions, common things in the Qlik Sense environment. And there's a number of low-level libraries that are used by those common Qlik libraries. The JSON library by Newtonsoft is one of those libraries that's used to manage the JSON messaging that's communicated back and forth between the client and the engine. So why should I use it? There's a lot of opportunities where you can take something like the .NET SDK and enable a wide range of applications. Certainly, if you already have a .NET environment, you have a .NET-based application that's running in WPF, WFC, in one of the .NET-based frameworks, you can leverage this, and it will fit really well into your existing development efforts. It gives you an opportunity to integrate Sense into your back-end processes in a very clean and smooth way. You can use it for developing specialized visualizations and custom visualizations. You can now easily develop web services that access proxies between, say, an end user in a SaaS environment. We've enabled out of the box end user self-service capability so he can create his own charts and graphs. But what about the administrators that are out in our customer base? We don't want to give them access to the whole management console, but we may want to open up pieces of it so that they can manage their users. They can manage licensing. And you can use this along with a web service to allow end users to start having access to aspects of the management console and really a customer-facing management console so they can manage some of their own back-end environment capabilities. We can leverage the Qlik engine. I now have an opportunity to take that associative data engine and use it as a calculator in order to perform calculations across millions or hundreds of millions of rows of data and provide that answer set back to me. So I can then take those answers and push them into a third-party visualization or put those into a report or put them into an email or any kind of other application that might be on the other side of your web service. You can create and or integrate desktop applications. So I actually have a number of customers that have desktop-based solutions, and they ship desktop-based solutions. And for them to integrate and incorporate visualizations and analytic capabilities, they selected Qlik, and they can leverage the .NET SDK to incorporate Qlik Sense analytics support directly into their end products. The proxy service. The proxy service API also has a number of sub-APIs for controlling and managing the connection for user security sessions. The proxy API itself has an authentication API so that we can manage and control authentication. There's a logout API so we can cleanly log users out and shut down their sessions. There's a personal API for personal queries and a non-entity paths. So some of those other paths and endpoints we want to be able to go out and grab. The session module gives us the opportunity to manage sessions and look at aspects of session management, closing sessions, starting up sessions, recovering sessions. And load balancing module is where we can control where an application is open. Qlik has a load balancing module that's available out of the box, but if you don't like the way that we're doing a load balancing, you literally can create your own load balancing module and add it into the environment. User directory connector APIs enable the communication to user directories so that we can retrieve user and user group information and to make that available to the Qlik Sense environment. Security rules, managing how we allocate licenses to users, if we're doing it on an automated basis or on a restricted basis, and then who has authorization and access to certain kinds of applications and certain security streams. It is a .NET-based API used primarily for importing users and groups in the Qlik Sense environment. There's support for Active Directory, so you can connect to a Microsoft Active Directory service. There's a generic LDAP, so you can connect to lightweight directory access services using the ADAP protocol tree, and you can use that to connect to things such as Novell or Open LDAP or the Apache Directory Service. You can also do ODBC connections. There's an ODBC connector that you can use for those homegrown user directory sources environments. This is probably the most common thing that I see with my OEM customers are homegrown portals with a homegrown authentication mechanism in play. And they typically have groups or roles that are a part of that, and they can leverage and use the ODBC to resolve some of the user group relationships. The engine API is the API that we can use to communicate directly with the engine. It uses JSON as a protocol for passing information between the engine and the clients. It's through this API that I might request on the fly, I want this calculation and I want this dimension. I want year, month as my dimension, and I want to do a calculation of sum up all of the sales. We can create what we call a hypercube using this API. We can specify the formula. We can specify the dimensionality. We can send that to the engine. The engine will calculate the results and fill in that grid with all the calculator answers, sales by month and year, and it will pass that back to me. I can then take that grid of calculator results and do with them as I please. That communication is based on a secured WebSocket layer, so it requires a WebSocket library to be in play. You can do that communication over a socket. JSON is used for the messaging, and there is a protocol testing tool so that you can look at the JSON request that you're forming programmatically and you're sending to the engine. You can actually form that up, send it to the engine, and see what the response is, help you identify the proper formation for a particular functional request that you're making of the engine, and you can test the ones that you're generating. So it's a great little tool for the development environment. The Qlik Sense QVS SDK. QVX is a format QlikQ uses for doing data exchange. It is one that's been optimized and provides high performance for streaming data into Qlik Sense. You can output to a file and read those QVX files with Qlik Sense in the load script, or you can create a custom connector, use the QVX as the format that's being brought in, stream that data into the QlikView application. The file format is main parts. There's a metadata section that describes the data, and then there's the actual data block that follows after. It is a .NET framework, client profile or above type product, so this is something that you would develop with Visual Studio in a .NET world using something like C# as a programming language. But a way to easily take data from custom data sources and moving them into a QlikView data model. What you want to do in that connector is up to you. This is one way that you might have an encrypted data source, so your custom connector is going to perform the de-encryption and then pass that data to Qlik in a clear form so that it can be viewed and analyzed by the end user. Repository API. Repository API enables basic communication with Qlik Sense repository. Now, repository holds all that data and configuration information for a Qlik Sense site. A lot of the things you typically would do through the Qlik Sense management console, like adding users, creating new users, adding a task, schedule a reload, triggering a task, perform a reload, managing users and their roles within the system, if they're going to be administrators or content administrators or audit administrators, if you want to generate security rules. Those are all things that we typically do through the management console. The API will allow you to do all those things we do in a console world outside of the console. It is a REST-based service and gives you an incredible range of automation opportunity. This is one of those places where you leverage this API to extend end-user management of their environment. And what you expose to them can be limited and restricted to the things you want an end-user administrator to have the ability to do. It might be scheduling a task and how often that application should refresh the data. The thing that's great about using this repository and putting that web service between a management console and the repository service between the back end and the end user, it gives you an opportunity to enhance that request and manage that request by applying policy. So if somebody can say, I want to reload my application, and they can save the schedule, you may not want them reloading the application every 1 minute. You may say the minimum reload time that you're allowed to specify is 4 hours. Somebody else might have a 2-hour contract. So it gives you a lot of opportunity of applying and enforcing internal policies along with extending capabilities out to your end users or into your back-end support system. So if we look at the platform, we can see where all the APIs start to line up. We've got the mashup extension and back-end that are really addressing the front-end needs along with the .NET SDK. For people logging into the system, we can leverage the Proxy APIs to manage and control authentication. It gives us that opportunity to have, say, 2 authentication streams, one based on SAML, the other one based on Windows Active Directory, and have those run in parallel to ensure that we give opportunity for people to log out of the system and cleanly shut down with the personal API to make requests about their personal information, the session module so we can manage and control the session and control that in conjunction with load balancing of applications across the QlikView implementation and deployment. The user directory connectory, so we can resolve when someone logs in, are they a member of a particular group? If so, they have authorization to a particular set of applications. The engine API, so we can interact with that engine, performing calculations, making selections, etc. The repository API, so that we can take this administrator capability and extend it out to the front end or use it as part of an automated process when we add a new customer or a new client to our SaaS environment. We can leverage this API to automate all the things that we're going to do when we set up a new customer. And then the QVS SDK, so we can write interfaces into a custom development environment. So let's take a look at some of the APIs in action. I'm going to share my screen. So a couple of basics. If you go to help.qlik.com, you get help on Qlik Sense. There's 2 basic sites. There's a help site, and that's how to use Qlik Sense, how to use the product, how to deploy it, how to build applications, how to manage the nodes. There's also a developer's help site. So if you go to the developer's help and click on 1.1, you'll see there's all the documentation for all the APIs. So it's a great place to have references into it. The first API we're going to really say is the .NET SDK. So I brought up Visual Studio, and this particular application is just simply going to open up Qlik Sense. It's going to expose the UI so that I can interact with Qlik Sense. We'll take a look at what Qlik Sense looks like in just a simple web page. If you're coming into it through the normal UI and normal interface, and what it looks like in just a simple Windows form. So I'm going to open up a browser. I'm going to go to my Qlik Sense Hub. And I'll come into a hub environment. It's through this environment that I can see all the applications that I have. I can click on an application. It will open up that dashboard and give me an overview of the particular dashboard. And then I can go ahead and see these are all the web pages I have available to me, or application dashboards that are available. I can go ahead and click on one of those, open up that page, and I can start to interact with the analytics and start to analyze that data and move through it and start to explore different selections and different pieces of time that I'm used to seeing. So I'm going to minimize this. This particular application is going to define a form. It's going to use Qlik Engine to define where the engine is located. Is it on a local host? It is on server number 1, server number 2. It will go ahead and invoke and open up that engine. Once we open up the engine, it's going to prep me so that I can now make requests from it. So we're going to go ahead and we'll click Start. We'll go ahead and start this app. And it's a little bit slower in the Visual Studio environment because it opens up all the debugging stuff. But here's my form. The first thing I want to do is come in and open up the dashboard. So I'm going to control the way that people make their selections. I may not give them that control and just automatically open up an application when they say go open up my app. In this case, we'll open up that same dashboard, the executive dashboard. And I can see I've got my basic hub. I can see a list of the different sheets in that dashboard. As I resize, it dynamically adapts to the bit of a real estate that I have available to me. So whether I'm looking at things in a landscape form on my iPad, or if I'm moving down to more of a portrait view, or if I'm running on, my cell phone, I get different views of how that's going to present to me based on managing that real estate. Then I can come in. I can go ahead and open up this particular page. I'll make it full screen. Notice that all my selections were maintained for me from opening up the app earlier. I can come in and make a whole new set of selections, modify that, and work on it just like I'm working on it in the normal Qlik Sense environment. But now I'm working through a Windows form. I can come in and clear all my selections. You can take certain kinds of functionalities like clear and plug them into a window or into a toolbar kind of selection environment. I can go ahead and close my application, come back in and open up a different application if there's something else that I want to look at. Okay, and I can have that great experience and go ahead and keep that, in my forms-based environment. Okay, so I'm going to scooch this off to the side, and we'll take a look at Workbench, and it's something called Single. So one of the things that's available to you is an application called Single. Single is the simplest way to come in and work with a particular application. So when you run in Single, it's going to look at my environment. It's going to see all the different visualizations that I have available to me. If I open up that executive dashboard, it's going to open up and show me all the different objects that are inside that dashboard. I can pick one of those. It will show me what the URL is. If I want to include a current selection bar, I can either allow interaction or not allow interaction. And I can get a preview of it, see how it looks, see how it works. And then I can come up here and copy the URL. I'll open up a brand new dashboard or a brand new browser. I can go ahead and recopy it. Single object. Let's copy that. See if it copy and paste that in, hit return. and it will open up that object, in this case with the current selection bar, in a web page all by itself. And now I can come in and I can start to interact with it. I can go ahead and lasso and make selections, grab just those things that I'm interested in, and not grab the ones that I'm not interested in. Go ahead and keep that selection. That's now up here in the current selection box where I can further add or take people away and bring new things into it, interact with it. Like Qlik, it's fully responsive and adapted to my screen size. So as that screen environment changes and resizes, I'm going to rechange with it. This whole application is written on and built using the same APIs that are available through the API help environment that are available with the product are the same ones that our developers are using to develop these kinds of web pages and tools. A second tool that we'll take a look at is called Workbench. Workbench takes that same single object. It takes it to a new level. So when I'm working in Workbench, I can work with a couple of different kinds of things. I can work with mashups. I can work with visualizations, so create my own charts or list boxes or tables. I can have just a basic visualization type of template. And if you want to create a new one, you can create a mashup. You can go ahead and type in a mashup name. I'm just going to type in 3 Z's. Say create, click on it, edit it. It will bring up a basic template. We can go ahead and open up the application that we're interested in, and I can simply start to drag and drop objects onto the sheet and then view it, start to interact with it. What's great about viewing and working with these is that they end up working just like Qlik. You don't have to be a hardcore application level developer because Qlik understands how all of these things relate to each other. So as I make selections, those things that are affected by that selection are going to update as I make selections. So a lot of power and a lot of flexibility in how that's done. The Workbench actually generates and shows you the code. So as a springboard, it's very easy to start cut and paste the links that are necessary. I can cut and paste my JavaScript and bring that in. I can do more advanced kinds of things like adding lists. So if I want to add a list, I can pick a dimension. I want to respond to product selections. I'm going to have a callback function. I'm going to call it called CB product. Save. And now when I'm looking at my JavaScript, I can see that that callback function has been automatically added for me. So there's my stub, and I can come in and do something and start to do whatever I want inside of here. I can make other calls to the other APIs. I'm just going to do a simple hello here. So we'll do a traditional hello world. And we want to view this. So there's my hello world. And now as I come in and start to make certain kinds of selections, if I'm affecting my products, then I've got an updated list of products that were sold to those specific customers. So even though product isn't in here, product is still driven through association by that list of customers. When that pop-up happens, I can do whatever I want. I can grab the list of selected products, or I can go grab the list of selected customers, and I can push those into my back-end system and say send notifications. And it can send them notifications about those products or about those accounts or about those orders or those receivables. A lot of power and opportunity that you can perform. I'm going to close these off. One of the other mashups or extension objects that I wrote is one that I call ARIMA forecast. And in this particular one, it's leveraging just an extension object, so there's no visual per se, like there is in Workbench. This is the code that sits behind it. And this one is performing an ARIMA communication and forecast analytic with R. So if we look at Qlik Sense, let's go to the hub. I'm going to open up an application called CAR. And go ahead and open this up. I've got a little loading, and there's my ARIMA forecast. It's for this particular set of periods. If I want to clear that out, the extension object is then going to take all of the years, all of the dates that are in play, It's going to send those to the web service, and this can perform that forecast for that particular set using R and an ARIMA forecast fit. I want to increase the forecasting periods to 30, so I can go ahead and add other controls and other sliders to help control other aspects of these. Again, as I make a set of selections in my chart, it all is tied together. So every time I make a selection, I'm going to get a new forecast based on that middle period. And we can see it's relatively flat. So I get my peak and it starts to soften back down. So a lot of flexibility in how you can work with the APIs to bring new business value and deliver those new capabilities to your end users. If we look at the Qlik Sense Hub, let me go ahead and open up the Hub again. And I want to create a brand new application. Again, I'm going to call this just a bunch of Z's, stick it on the end. I want to open up that application. I'm going to go into the data load editor. So now I want to start creating a brand new app. I'm going to take advantage of a custom connector that's leveraging the Qlik SDK. And this particular connector is the Salesforce.com. So it prompts me for my username, my password information, the security token, the batch size, the bulk, and any other optional parameters. I can go ahead and create that connector and insert it into my code and start to bring in data from Salesforce.com. So this is a place where you would use the .NET QDX API to create a custom connector to a custom data source. And in this case, the value is in that non-free format of Salesforce.com, the customalities of it that happen within Salesforce, and then making sure that I have proper authorization when I'm reaching into Salesforce.com to bring in data. So that can be pulled up as well. And let me see if I have anything else to show you. I think we're in pretty good shape from a demo perspective. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I do have one more thing I want to show you, actually. This is one that you can go out and you can try for yourself. So let me reshare my screen real quick. You can go to collegebasketball.qlik.com. And it's an excellent example of a mashup. This is one of the things that one of our guys here in the field wrote, because he's a big basketball fan and he follows March Madness. So basketball, collegebasketball.qlik.com. You can go ahead and go there, and you'll get a bracket. You can go ahead and decide, who you think is going to move through the brackets. Whenever you get one of these little bar charts, you can click on those bar charts, and it will bring up analytics out of QlikView, let you see how those two teams compare, what their seasons were like, game details on all the games. You can go to different tabs and look at different statistics based on the different players, look at player stats. And again, you can come in and interact with those. You can grab, the tier of players that you're really interested in looking at. And as you make those selections, everything is going to update and reflect that group of athletes. You can even come in and build your own. So it's a great application to go in and explore. Go ahead and take a look at the page source. Do a right-click source on it, and start to take a look at how that application was built. So it's a great little example. Again, it's collegebasketball.qlik.com. We'll get you to that page. So resources, there are a number of resources that are available for you out there. There's online documentation at help.qlik.com that we took a look at. These are the links on how to open up Workbench if you've got a server-based environment or a desktop-based environment. The same for single and the same for the protocol tester. These are things that you can all go take a look at and go work with.